guys, welcome back to Irony Completed. Today is super casual. In fact, I'm wearing a Doctor Who shirt. May or may not be wearing a bra. A few of you guys have asked me to do more book themed videos. I want to listen to what you guys want, and obviously book videos are only part of my channel, but some of you guys don't really like the beauty videos, some of you guys prefer the book videos, so I want to please everyone, and I haven't done a whole lot of books related things lately. I want to do a book tag video today, and I just searched. This isn't a recent tag or anything, at least I don't think so. I just searched through a couple of blogs, a couple of videos, till I found one that sounded interesting and that I could physically do with the amount of books that I currently have with me at university, and this is what I came up with. This is the opposite book tag, in case you couldn't tell from the title, and basically the idea of this book tag is that they ask you questions that are opposites, so like the first book you ever bought and the last book you bought. Let's get on with this video. The first question is the first book that you bought and the last book that you bought. So this is one of the first books I remember being read as a baby. Is a like big anthology of Dr. Seuss poems and stories, and was it called Yertle the Turtle and Other Stories? I can't remember. It was like in a pink hardback, and I still have it. I actually still own almost all of the books that I had when I was a child, because I was a really careful, neat child and I didn't really like wreck many of my things. So I still have almost all of the books that I had when I was a baby, which is exciting. And the most recent book, or the last book that I bought, is The Infinite Sea by Rick Yancey. This is the sequel to The Fifth Wave and the third book in this series. I think it came out this week, so I'm gonna have to go and buy the third book in this series sometime soon, because I really enjoyed this and I read this really quickly. The second question is the cheapest book and the most expensive book that you own. The problem with this question for me is that almost all of my books are bought secondhand. I almost exclusively buy books secondhand from a shop in my hometown that sells things for £1. So the cheapest book in terms of best value for money, in my opinion, is this Complete Works of Oscar Wilde volume. It's really big and it contains everything that Oscar Wilde ever wrote, all his poems, all his plays, and the Picture of Dorian Gray, and his other short stories. So I think this is the best value for money, because I've seen this in other charity shops for a hell of a lot more than what I paid for it, and I paid £1. The most expensive book I think I own, or like the book that's worth the most that I think that I own, I am torn between two. Neither one of them is here at uni with me. I have a first edition, unopened, still in its package copy of The Deathly Hallows, the Harry Potter book. I think that might be worth something someday, but I don't think it's the most expensive book that I own. And the other option that I think might be the most expensive, or like worth the most book that I own, is a copy of Animal Farm that's illustrated by Ralph Steadman, and it was also signed by Ralph Steadman in 1996, which is the year that I was born, which is pretty cool. And I think that that might be worth the most, probably, if I tried to sell it, but I would never sell it, so I don't really know. Like I said, I don't buy expensive books. The next question is something with a male protagonist and something with a female protagonist. Well, I don't have a lot of my like young adult books here, so it was really hard for me to find something on this shelf that was a like female protagonist book, because a lot of them are male, because a lot of them are classics, and history is very misogynistic, in case you didn't know. But something with a male protagonist is The Picture of Dorian Gray. This is a really cool copy with Ryan Gosling on the front. This is not first person, but the main character and almost all of the characters in it are men. And something with a female protagonist that I could find easily on this shelf was Alice in Wonderland. This is a copy of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass, but obviously this is a very iconic female-driven children's story. The fourth question is a book that you read really fast and a book that you read really slow. A book that I read really quickly was The Infinite Sea by Rick Yancey. Again, it's the only book that I've read lately that I can remember how long it took me to read it. I read this in 2 days. This is the quickest I've read a book lately, but I've definitely read things quicker than this in the past. I just can't remember them. But yeah, this one didn't take me very long to read at all. I really enjoyed it. It was really like fast-paced. And a book that took me a while to read lately, this took me like a month, because I started reading this before exams and then I kind of like petered out during exams, and then I started reading it again after exams, so it technically only took me like 3 or 4 days to read, but those 3 or 4 days were spaced over a month, so it took me a month to read. That's the slowest I've read a book for a while. Did I tell you what this was? This is Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut, in case I didn't say what it was before. Really great book. The next question is a book that has a pretty cover / a book that has a ugly cover. So a book that has a pretty cover, I'm torn between these two. I have lots of really beautiful books, but like I said, I'm kind of limited with what I've got with me at university, and I feel like this question really, you know, demands you show the cover. So I'm torn between these two. This is Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk, and I think this cover is awesome. Not necessarily pretty, but it's a really beautiful cover in my opinion, and I think it looks really cool. Another book that I think has a pretty cover is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. And another book that I think has a really pretty cover is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. This one's really interesting. I actually collect copies of this because I think that they have so many beautiful editions of this book. However, it's interesting that I think that this is a pretty cover considering the fact that this is a book about a pedophile from the perspective of a pedophile, from the perspective of a child abuser, written in first person by a child abuser essentially. Yet a sexualized young woman is on the front, so I'm kind of conflicted about this because I think that I read somewhere that Nabokov specifically said that Lolita should not feature on the cover of any of his books, and all the ones that I find are with Lolita on the front, but I still think that they have really cool covers with like really pretty 90s looking girls and stuff, so I still like it, but I'm very conflicted about it at the same time. Honestly, this girl's hair is also goals and her dress is also goals. It was not that cool when I was 12. As for a book with a really ugly cover, this one was so easy for me. This is the ugliest book that I own. It is Willa Cather's The Professor's House. It's so ugly looking. I bought this really cheap online. I think I got it for like less than £1 or something. And it's just a really ugly looking book. Not even necessarily because of the cover, but because of the way it's laid out, and like it's just an ugly, shiny, disgusting paperback. Amareo Publishers. You did a bad job. The next question is a book that is national to you and a book that is international to you. See, international is almost all of my books because most books that I read are American. I do own a lot of English books as well, but most of the books that I read are American. So for the international question, I'm just going to say basically everything that I own. I also own a lot of Moomin books, which are Finnish. So, you know, a lot of the stuff I own is not English. However, something that was written by an English author that is one of my favourite books is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. This has like all of them in this one volume, but Douglas Adams is a very iconic English author, and yeah, he was really fantastic, iconic British author, British writer, really cool, and one of the only kind of modern British authors who gets a lot of recognition. Not a lot of them get a lot of recognition, if you know what I mean. The next question is a book that's really thin versus a book that is really thick. I have a lot of thin books because I have a lot of poetry books, but one that is really thin is The Melancholy Death of Oyster Boy by Tim Burton. This is like a poetry / short stories book, and it's got some illustrations in it. Just a really cool book, but it is really thin because it is short stories and poems. So this is probably one of the thinnest books, if not the thinnest book I own. And in terms of really thick, fat books, I have a lot. Obviously the complete works of Oscar Wilde is quite big, but probably the biggest two that I own, I have a complete collection of all of the Sherlock Holmes stories by Arthur Conan Doyle. That is a huge hardback book that's beautiful, but it's a huge hardback book. And I also have a complete volumes of Bone, the comic book Bone. That's a really heavy book. I feel like for a really long time that was like the heaviest book in the world in my imagination, and that is probably one of the other thickest, fattest books I own. The next question is a fiction book and a non-fiction book. I own a lot of non-fiction, surprisingly, but a fiction book is the book that I'm currently reading. This is Stardust by Neil Gaiman. This is a fictional book that was also made into a movie, and I love the movie, so I decided to read the book about halfway through. Really excited about it. Yeah, I own a lot of fiction books though. And a non-fiction book that I own, well, there are lots of them. I have a hell of a lot of non-fiction books. I own a lot of non-fiction things, but all of my textbooks are not here. Most of the non-fiction books that I own are about movies, about directors. I own a lot of textbooks that are about like films and film studies and cinema and stuff like that. And I also own a lot of books about like Aki Kaurismäki and Hitchcock and Tim Burton and like the Harry Potter movies, and like I have a lot of movie companion books, so they're like film-based books are the most non-fiction books that I own. The next question is a really overly crazy too romantic book and an action book. I don't get why these are opposites because a lot of the action books that I read have romance in them, so it's really hard for me to think of an action series where there is basically no romance, and I couldn't think of one that was non. But first of all, a really romantic book is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I don't have it here with me, it's at home. But seriously, that is a super romantic, super beautiful book. And I wish I'd put it to uni with me actually, I kind of want to reread it now. And a book that is like all action and like very little romance, but there is still romance in it, is a series by Charlie Higson called The Enemy series. It's about zombies, it's about teenagers. Basically the premise of the book is that all the adults turn into zombies, everyone over the age of 14, and all the kids are left and they have to fight for themselves. And there are some kind of like crushes and like romantic subplots, but for the most part it's not a super romantic book, so that's the best I could think of. What is up with my eyebrow? And the last question is a book that makes you happy and a book that makes you sad. This is kind of random. I feel like it shouldn't be this way around. A book that makes me happy, even though it's not like a happy book, is The Great Gatsby. Every time I read The Great Gatsby, I just feel so happy. It's one of my favourite books. It's just amazing, it's great, it makes me so happy even though it's quite a sad book, it's a critical commentary, and it's not necessarily supposed to be a happy book. It still makes me really, 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 really happy. I think it's just because it's like my favourite book. And another one of my favourite books is something that makes me sad, and this is Lolita. And I've already mentioned this, you guys know what it's about, I've talked about it 100 times because it's one of my favourite books. But this is such a sad story because of the content and the subject matter and the fact that this little girl's life is ruined, and at the same time it's like not sad because it's like twisted because it's such a unreliable narrator. But yeah, this is a book that makes me really, really sad because every time I read it I just feel so sorry for Lolita and I just feel so bad for her. And yeah, that's everything for this video. I hope you guys who were requesting more book kind of videos enjoyed it, and if you have any other videos book related or non-book related that you think I should do, then please let me know down in the comments and I'll make sure that I get around to doing those. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to, then please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Tumblr or Instagram, they'll all be linked down in the description along with everything that I'm wearing and what's on my face right now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!